Wow. Let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. What did you think about the season finale of The Mandalorian, as well as the season as a whole? Feel free to spoil away in the comments section. You've been warned if you haven't watched the episode yet, but just go watch the episode real quick. If you're new to one of these reviews that I do, I give my general impression spoiler-free for a couple minutes at the beginning, then I talk through everything fun in the middle of it and give kind of closing thoughts at the end. If you want to skip ahead to a specific topic, thing that happened in the episode, I'll have time codes down below for everything kind of juicy that you might want to know my specific thoughts on. And at the very end, I'll give my kind of quick thoughts on the season as a whole and the series as a whole thus far. But on that point, I do have an extra Mandalorian video over on my Patreon page where I'm going to give my more in-depth review of the season, where I'll kind of talk about the things I think it did well as a whole, the things I thought it did weak as a whole, how it applies to kind of this whole story, especially with where this ends. It plays... I have some thoughts that I'll, of course, talk about a little bit in here and a lot in that companion video. The link is down below in the description if you want to check that one out. And let's get started with my thoughts in general on the episode. And I mean, it was fantastic. It was just great. As a payoff for everything that they've set up for 15 chapters, it just delivered everything you wanted. There was no kind of like weak points in regards to like having the action you wanted, bringing in all kind of these characters that have been set up along the way, having tension amongst them, teasing future things, and then all leading to the final 10 minutes where we knew there was going to be some reveal, some sort of payoff at the end. And they went all out for it. I mean, it absolutely puts a smile on any Star Wars fan's face and delivers something that we, of course, wanted to see. If you haven't seen the episode yet, just go watch it. Now let's get started talking about all the juicy good stuff in this episode. So it kicks off with our heroes chasing after a star shuttle, trying to get the clone engineer guy, and they pretty quickly are able to catch up with him, disable the ship, and one of the pilots of the shuttle is like one of these mean-spirited Imperials. That's one of the things that I think has been a little bit interesting about the season, is you start to see different sides to the Imperial forces. You know, Quill from season 1, he was an Imperial, but he was a slave. And then you have couple of the pilots on these ships, they're just people with a job. They're just doing what they're told to do to get a paycheck. They're not real believers. And then you have a handful of these Imperials that truly believe in this, that they believe that the rebellion, the revolution led to chaos in the universe. And as this guy in the shuttle says, that, you know, the destruction of Alderaan was worth it to squash terrorism. And you have a group of them that really believe this. It's like, you guys killed millions of government officials destroying the Death Stars, and you think that you're the heroes for doing that. You're terrorists. And that's, the books have really elaborated on that side, the two sides to it. But the live action has been a little bit more black and white, Empire bad, rebellion good. And this show is just given just a bit of that glimpse of, you can't just romanticize the rebellion. The rebellion was a group of people tearing down a fascist government, and that had consequences. And there are people that believe, like, you led to chaos in the universe. We brought order, and you messed it up. And Alderaan was destroyed because you guys were trying to rebel against the government, and you caused chaos. And I think that's some of the stuff that's fleshing out the universe, the worldview, the different perspectives on all of that is one of the things that this show's been able to do by introducing us to these mini characters all along the way. So they get genetic engineer guy, and then they head off to go get Bo-Katan. And, you know, she's sitting around with her buddies, sipping soup and everything like that. And Mando and Boba walk up, and they really don't like Boba Fett. immediately don't like him, what he stands for, and that he's a clone. It was just even that little banter of like, what do Mandalorians think of all of Jango's offspring through cloning? And they call him like, your donor, you mean? Instead of because he calls Jango his father, no, your donor. And just even that sort of acknowledgement was a nice little tease. Fight breaks out amongst them. So you get some fun little stuff in there. But eventually they like, as Mando makes it clear, we're going off Moff Gideon. We know where he's at. And she's like, I need this sword. And I'll have a lot of back and forth. But you really realize Bo-Katan is very much in all of this for her own best interest. It's not so simple, like at all, that she's just more altruistic or a good guy. No, she has her own best interest, and if helping you helps her, that's what she's going to do. So some nice little back and forth in that, but eventually, because Mando knows where to find the Darksaber, she's like, all right, we're on board to make this happen. So they devise a rescue plan, and they have the shuttle basically pretend as if it's the real shuttle flying with the genetic guy. Well, Boba Fett is chasing after them, shooting at it. It's trying to avoid all of this. So they start releasing TIE fighters. And while they're releasing TIE fighters, they just kind of crash the shuttle in. And then once the TIE fighters are about to go after Boba, he jets on out of there. So we don't get to see him shoot as many people in this finale as we might have liked. More on seeing him again later in this review. So they get off the shuttle, start shooting people, pew, 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 and which is always fun to see on Imperial ships and see stormtroopers getting shot down. And they split up. A group of them go looking for our saber, and Mando goes to try and lock the dark troopers in their room and jettison them out into space because they're going to be a problem as they're like super duper duper tough troopers. So get lots of shooting in the hallways, and Mando manages to get to the room with the dark troopers just a little bit too late, almost there on time, but like 15 seconds would have done him a lot of good. And one of them gets out, and so he has this fight with it. It's kind of fun to see him getting beat up while doing all sorts of cool stuff at the same time. And luckily, a few episodes back, he got himself a Beskar spear, so he's able to get some good moves in on this guy, snaps his head off, and then blows the other ones out into space. And as soon as that happened, I went, okay, they didn't spend episodes teasing how tough these guys are to just have them have a fight one and have them blown out into the airlock, so pretty sure something's going to go on with them where they're going to be seen again. So then he goes to go get his buddy Grogu while our other group of people take over the bridge, and Mando walks in, and Baby Yoda's there in his handcuffs with a dark saber in front of his face, and kind of get a little bit of that back and forth with Moff Gideon and Mando, where Gideon is a compulsive liar, lies about everything, but he has this gift to know everything that hasn't really been explained, how he seems to know so much stuff, but he always knows so much stuff. And so he's talking through what they're doing and all this stuff where clearly he's always ahead of Mando, but that doesn't mean he always has the upper hand on Mando. So he claims he's going to let Mando take Grogu because he's already got all the blood that he needs. As soon as Mando goes to grab Grogu, then he tries to hit him. Luckily, he's got that spear on his back, like the one thing that can't be cut through. So he's defended by his Beskar and his Beskar spear. And fight breaks out, which is kind of nice. Get to see Moff Gideon actually get into action using the Darksaber and be pretty good with it. It's much more agile than I was expecting for a gentleman of his age. So have some back and forth fighting. Eventually, Mando does get the upper hand and defeats him, gets the Darksaber, and Gideon, who always has more information, is like, oh, this is going to get real interesting. I'm like, well, no, it's like, interesting. He just won. Okay. Bo-Katan was very concerned about making sure that she defeated him. So, wonder where this is heading exactly. And so then they head up to the bridge, and Mando's holding Baby Yoda. He's got the guy in the handcuffs. They walk on the bridge, and immediately Bo-Katan's like, what happened? What happened? I was supposed to do that. And we learned that basically the only way you get the Darksaber is by defeating the person with the Darksaber, and Mando did that, not her. So she can't get the sword to try and reclaim Mandalore. So we have a bit of a conflict amongst our heroes. And so Gideon's trying to like spark something there, like, come and kill him, come and kill him. And Mando doesn't want to be killed. And so they're like this, you can feel like the tension growing inside of all of this. And then the Dark Troopers return, big fleet of them, load up in one of the bays and start walking towards the bridge. And they start banging on the door. And we've just been established earlier that all the shots in the world aren't going to take these guys out. That is not how this works. And there's a lot of them. Our heroes are in trouble. And because the signal was sent out, someone's going to show up. We've been speculating who's going to show up for a while. Several weeks now, pure speculation. Who's it going to be? And there's even been other teases, even before we knew the phone call was going out. Who is it going to be? Ezra? Is it going to be Cal? Is Ahsoka going to come back? What's it going to be? Is it going to be a Sith? Then we see an X-Wing fly up. And I, on the record, said I didn't think there was any way that we were going to see a certain famous Jedi show up. Be too expensive. Recast would be too goofy. I didn't think and it just felt too high profile. So I didn't think they would head down that path. And then we see the X-Wing. What? And we see this person in black cloaks, robes. And then he has a green lightsaber. And my wife literally says, who has a green lightsaber? Who has like, Jennifer, have you ever seen Return of the Jedi? I've seen it 1,000 times. And then after you see the green lightsaber, then you see the black glove. And they're either hard teasing this is heading down a path or to mislead us, or they're really doing this. And then our hooded fellow just makes his way through the ship, destroying these dark troopers without any hesitation, without any trouble, just destroys them, throws down, squishes them, slashes them, all of it, and makes his way to the bridge. The doors open, fog comes out, lightsaber leads, and he walks through, and it is digitally altered face, Luke Skywalker, come for Grogu. And they did it. They really went for it. And I thought about pulling my phone out just to like record my reactions. Like, they really went for it. And I mean, as a plot point of what would make sense in this universe at this point in time, it makes sense that they would do that. My reservations for it happening is Mark Hamill is very close to 70 years old. Recasting doesn't seem the best idea, and face swapping and stuff can be expensive. But if you have him with a hood around his head while he does all of his action, and you only have him for the final scene at the end, and you don't do quite the best job at it, there are ways to do it. You can do it, and they did it. And I lost my mind. Absolutely lost my mind at seeing him. And one of the big complaints that many of us had about Last Jedi, and there were many complaints that many of us had about Last Jedi, is that you didn't really get to see Luke in all of his power throw down. Like he does like a sneaky little fight with Kylo Ren, kind of messes around with Rey and gets kind of defeated by her. But you never really got to see Luke throw down. And in this, we kind of get our version of the Vader hallway sequence from Rogue One, with this dude walking through hallways, just destroying the people standing in front of him. We got to see Luke with 21st century technology and him as this trained, powerful Jedi, just destroying people. And they actually did it. And I've said Luke's my favorite Star Wars character, but that was very much The Last Jedi tested that for me quite a bit, because I do not like what they did with that. And this helps quite a bit in making Luke continue to be awesome and hopeful and optimistic and wanting to train people. So he shows up, and Mando doesn't, you have very clear, like, he doesn't want to lose his Grogu, but he knows this is what he's been trying to do, and he's very attached to him. And Luke's like, he wants to go, but you just need to give him permission. And so then you have Mando, without any thing forcing him to do this, decides to take his helmet off in front of all these people, as his values, his whole belief system throughout the course of these 16 chapters, which we'll get to in just a moment as to what I think that means. throughout these 16 chapters has been challenged, overturned, and everything he thought he believed in, he believes in something else a little bit more. And he has his own little family, and he's having to let go and release him to be trained. And it's as its own way, in parenting, you raise kids, and a part of parenting is learning to let go. And you have Mando, who from the beginning was just trying to get this guy to get rid of him, gives him away once, tries to get him back. And he's been trying to find a place to send him off to. But now the moment happens where he has to make that choice to do it. And what does he have to do? He has to take his helmet off so that he can interact face to face this one time before he goes along. Gives him to Luke. And Luke says, "May the Force be with you." And our episode ends. There is one more thing that happens. We'll get to that in just a second. Now, one of the reasons that I think that they could bring, one of the reasons I was skeptical about them bringing Luke in is because I was assuming that Mandalorian season 3 is coming in a year, and it would be a continuation of this one. And if it was Luke, you couldn't do that. You couldn't have Luke as a main character on the show. And it seemed weird if you had the show continue on without Grogu. This episode, I think, sealed the deal that was a wrong assumption. The Mandalorian is 16 chapters. This book is 16 chapters, and the book is finished. This was the journey of the Mandalorian was this bounty hunter religious zealot sent on a mission that causes him to rethink his whole way of life by the end of it with this journey with this kid, and that story's done. I don't think there is I could be wrong in a day. They could announce something totally different. I don't think there is a Mandalorian season 3 next year. I'm sure we'll see Mando again. They announced 1,000 shows. But this was the story. You get to the end of it, and it doesn't do the clips of the concept art. It's just credits. The music was different, and it teases plot lines, but Mando's journey of this show is complete. This story is complete. He's done what he set out to do, and he's been transformed throughout the process. His character journey has happened, and the show's journey has happened. Seems like a series finale to me. Thus, if you're doing a series finale and Grogu is heading off and we don't have to worry about seeing Luke a bunch, then you can't have him show up. And it feels like the fitting bookend that makes sense. If we're going to continue on and do Mando season 3, you need to have someone else that could show up and Grogu. But if it's the finale, you do something that really pays everything off. That makes sense. 5 years after Return of the Jedi, 6 years after Return of the Jedi, it makes sense Luke would show up. It's just a little bit tricky to do, given 35 years have passed since then. Or actually 38 years now have passed since 30. What year are we in? 37 years have passed since then. So I think that's kind of what went on and why the calculus in my brain was off as to whether we would or would not see Luke. But man, wow, what a payoff. That leads us to our next thing that happens. So you watch the credits that are normal credits, and then we get a post-credit scene. And we are back on Tatooine. We are back at Jabba's palace. Bib Fortuna is running things. And then Fennec shows up blasting guys. Boba walks down. Bib Fortuna's like, "Hey, I heard rumors you were alive." Boba just shoots him, and he just sits on Jabba's throne. And then it cuts to the Book of Boba Fett, December 2021. And they told us the third season of Mandalorian coming December 2021. They're not going to run The Mandalorian and Boba Fett at the same time. So the rumors about Boba Fett series starting to shoot a couple weeks back and The Mandalorian season 3 starting to shoot a couple weeks back, seems like it was just the Boba Fett show is starting to shoot, and they didn't want to say that. They didn't want to spoil the surprise. But my full interpretation of all of that is there's not Mandalorian season 3 a year from now. I think it's pretty obvious. I could be totally wrong. They'll make an announcement 2 days that no, we're going to have 2 Star Wars shows going side by side. I'm pretty sure the continuation show a year from now is the Boba Fett show. That seems pretty clear interpretation. Thus, why you can bring Luke in to close out that with a very satisfying, epic, awesome close out to what happened. And so then the one other dangling thread on this is that Mando has the Darksaber. They keep teasing this return to Mandalore. So it seems like that's setting up obviously some story that they want to tell. They left it as a very big dangling threads of all the things ways they could have written this episode. They chose to have Mando having possession of and power of the Darksaber, not Bo-Katan. And they kept teasing, setting up, maybe you could come with us, maybe you could come with us. Obviously, they're going somewhere with that. Obviously, that's going to be something. So I'm wondering, are they Mandalorian Book 2 several years down the line, 2 years down the line? Is that going to tie into one of these spinoffs that they announced? That's where some of this gets real fascinating to me, of like, they announced so much stuff. There's so many things we know that's coming, but they're still also kind of not revealing things that they're working towards while making it really obvious they're heading towards specific things. That's kind of a lot of fun. It's just a lot of fun to have that sort of mystery of like, when are we going to see the payoff to this Bo-Katan Mando dynamic, the battle return Mandalore, whatever it is. Fun times. It's just a lot of stuff to be excited about, the potential future for what could happen with all of this. But just in general, I mean, just a great episode, great finale. This show knows how to book into season, how to do something that really pays it off, teases something cool in the future. Actually teases a lot of cool things in the future. But so as for me, I loved this episode, and they absolutely ended on a high note. From there, let's move on to some just kind of final thoughts on the season as a whole. And basically, I think the season works a little bit better when you interpret it the way that I just mentioned of, this is really closing it out. We're finishing up the story, and we're not trying to tell 24 episodes. We're not trying to tell 32 episodes. Like, this is the whole thing. And I think you can interpret it a little bit better that way. And it really is about building the partnerships, putting the pieces in place, getting the piece of information that build up to this finale. So we've got 16 chapters. I've watched all of them in the last week. And I think it really does work well as a binge show. Some of the slower spots fit better when you can quickly move on past them than having to sit with them for a week of kind of disappointment. Looking at this season in particular, I had a lot of issues with chapter 10, Frog Lady Taxi episode. Rewatching the season, I hold up by that. I mean, you look at this season, every other episode put something really important in place. Something important happened, a relationship was built, we learned something, progressed things. In Fish Lady Taxi Driver episode, just didn't do that. Like, the Razor Crest got damaged, and we had a little bit more interaction with the New Republic guys, but it just didn't matter. That's frustrating. Especially when this whole journey, 16 chapters, it's only 16 chapters, and one of them was playing taxi. That's odd. I don't know if they just didn't have a better plot line or what, but that's still frustrating. This, I think, compared to the first season, I feel like this one is kind of more consistent of a bunch of episodes that were very good. Not fully great, but very good. There's always something a little bit kind of held it back from that necessarily top tier, but like episodes 1, 3 through 7, just very, very solid, good episodes that either delivered some fan fiction or that developed the plot, were the best written. And then this last one was just pretty fantastic. Probably, I don't want to spoil my ranking that's coming soon, but probably my favorite of the season. Very cool send-off. And so I just thought it was more consistent, but it also felt a little bit like almost all these episodes had something that you could see the better version of it. That about half these episodes, the big thing that made them pop was, look, it's Bo-Katan. Look, it's Ahsoka. But a lot of those ones didn't have as fleshed out of as a story. They didn't feel necessarily as well written. And then the standalone episodes felt like they were kind of better written and more efficient in what they did and what they delivered. But they didn't necessarily have that like big hook of someone showing up. But like I said, very, very good, solid episodes besides Chapter 10, besides Episode 2. And all of it, a lot of moments, consistently having moments that made you go, whoa, every week, except one of those weeks. Like they found a wow moment, whereas season 1 didn't have quite as many of those. They had some stuff like that. Season 2 really did a lot of that. I think sometimes they relied a bit too much on, look who it is, to make you go, whoa. But beyond that, a really solid season. And I think, I don't know, with this finale, it might be better than season 1. And I obviously really loved season 1. So tough to say. They each had a couple of their own strengths, their own weaknesses. So be sure to come back tomorrow. I'll have my ranking of all 16 chapters. Check out my Patreon page to see if you're interested in that expanded take on season 2 and my full kind of thoughts on it. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV too much.